Path of Exile's Talkative Try here with my two friends, SylverXYZ and Dreamcore. We are 1 day after the biggest Path of Exile announcement of all time at GGG Live, wherein Grinding Gear Games told us all about Path of Exile 2's Endgame, the Ascendancies, items, crafting, and much more. We are immediately going to dive into the Path of Exile 2 discussion with what you each thought was the wildest reveal yesterday. Dreamcore, I want to start with you.
Well, for me, the wildest reveal was easily the Ascendancies because, so for those of you who don't know, I flew out to LA 2 weeks ago and I had already had the Endgame presentation. I already kind of knew about all of the Endgame stuff. But the one thing that they were really cagey about in that presentation was the Ascendancies. They didn't really say anything about them. They just kind of, you know, they showed the Ascendancy altar and like clicked on it a little bit. We saw some of the Ascendancy names and they did like a really small preview of the Infernalist with the demon form. But other than that, we had nothing about Ascendancy. So I went into this reveal stream thinking like, I hope there's something new for me to see because like, you know, one of the things with PoE that I love is getting excited for a stream. Like the stream is coming up, you're so excited to see it. But for me, it was really weird this time around because I already knew a lot of it already. So like the experience was a little bit weird, but there was definitely a lot of stuff there for me like that I hadn't seen before, you know. So that was just amazing. The Ascendancies are crazy. They look really interesting. I like them.
Definitely, and I have to say it. Congratulations, Dreamcore. How was your time in LA? I'm sure it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a really cool event. It was a lot of traveling for a 1 day event, and I was really tired. But it was a great event. I met some really cool people. Yeah, just an awesome event. Got to play PoE2 for the first time. Which
your video that you released on it, the very first one. I know you're going to have a few more releasing the next few days. The ending of it, I thought, was just beautiful. The conclusion that you came to, essentially, that Path of Exile 2 is really just everything Grinding Gear Games wanted to do with Path of Exile 1 realized to its fullest potential. And it's basically better in every single way. And how that made you feel safer with PoE2. Because I know for a little bit there was some, not dooming, but skepticism about it.
Yeah, but I think... I mean, someone commented earlier on that video that they said that because I said the only ARPG I've played is PoE1, which is the truth. Like, I haven't played any other ARPGs. You know, it's crazy that I'm even playing this game. It's not the sort of game that I would have just picked up. A friend recommended it to me, and then I really enjoyed it. And someone commented saying that, you know, my opinion is a bit invalidated because I've only played PoE1. But the truth is, I think most of the skepticism in the scene came from PoE1 players. Everyone else looking in is so excited for PoE2 from the beginnings with everything they were seeing. But it's all of the skepticism is around PoE1 players because, you know, making that jump.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me to actually play PoE2 and come out with that impression that this game is just a massive upgrade to PoE1, because that's just what it felt like ultimately to me. Like everything is just incredible quality. Like it's what they have been able to do with the crazy resources they have now. You know, back then they were just some guys in a garage making a game, right? And now they're just this epic group of. I mean, they're just so good, right? The developers are so good at what they do. Like that, it's just it's incredible.
And they're lean. They're very lean. So it's surprising they can do as much as they do with the manpower that they currently have, especially since they're also running PoE1 and they did just release a banger league. Sylver, your wildest thing that happened yesterday. I'm really curious to hear your take. You can't take the Ascendancies. Sorry, bro.
No, it's good. It's good. There's so much to pick up from what you just said, but I'm like, I need to we'll let the conversation evolve because there's just a lot going on. Obviously, big key things. Another big key thing is the infinite atlas, the infinite, you know, scaling world map that we've now got to replace the Atlas of Worlds. That is, I didn't expect that actually. That came so far out of left field for me. and seeing the map in this kind of isometric, you know, feeling like, I don't know, it's like a Catan kind of like thing going on with like biomes, and it immediately made me think. It was like the first thought I had was, they've eaten monoliths, like in a way, like there's some weird kind of like thing from last Epoch, like they've just kind of like taken a bit of that inspiration. The fact that you can't rerun a map, I think, is what makes it feel special to me and quite unique. I think personally that was like a really small detail that I think makes a massive difference in the sense of actual exploration. Like if you die, there's a punishment, and this goes all the way back to our good friend Medium Core here, who, you know, coined the term medium core or mid core, because because I think Dream was, you know, in previous podcasts was saying, oh, I think it's gonna, like, PoE2 is gonna have this kind of semi-hardcore experience, and a lot of people won't feel the need to play hardcore as much, maybe. And I think that is a really good example of how, as you get into the end game, you get a bit more serious and knowledgeable about the game. You're going to actually have a form of challenge in not just the difficulty of the areas and the monsters kind of way, but you're gaining challenge in terms of, like, don't mess up because you're going to lose content. And
high stakes. High stakes.
High stakes, exactly. And I think that really matters. And I think some people are going to be worried about that, but I'm really glad they're leaning in that direction. And Mark talked about this in the Q&A with Ziggy afterwards, that they're walking a very fine line between making it very difficult and feel like a challenge and therefore feel rewarding, but obviously not trying to alienate too many players and not have like only meta broken builds, you know, within each league, be able to do the high end content. And so I think things like failing a map and then losing the map is a really clever way of adding difficulty without adding difficulty, if that makes sense. It's adding punishment, or a kind of like, don't lose concentration while you're mapping, because you might lose this, you know, mini thing, rather than gating access to certain content.
Completely true. Completely true. You guys took my number 1 and number 2 surprises. No shock there. I do want to elaborate a bit on the end game, and I know we're going to dive into it deeper. I think one of the great parts about it as well is that it's going to be difficult, right? But you also get to scale up that difficulty as you choose, with all the different ways you can edit stuff off the bat. If we're going to take a look at other ARPGs, let's look at last Epoch, right? If it's kind of like monoliths, you can't really edit monoliths. Sure, you can raise your corruption levels, but you can't choose the benefits on a map or a monolith, or the negatives. You can't add content yourself by using, what are they called now in Path of Exile 2? It's waystones, and what's the content addition piece?
Tablets.
Oh, tablets. There you go, right?
Yeah.
I thought they were about to dive into Lake of Kalandra when he said that, and I was going, oh my God, not Lake of Kalandra. Did not happen. But very cool stuff. Very excited. Mine's really quick. My number 3, guys. They're going to launch with an uber pinnacle boss, and no one's going to know what it is. Besides Ziggy D, apparently, who got a preview of it. But no one, they said, we want you to find out live. We're going to watch you. First person to get there gets there. I wonder if there's going to be a community bounty event or something. It doesn't sound like Grinding Gear Games is going to do something official. There should totally be some sort of unofficial, if not official, trophy for the first person to down that boss, whatever it is. We could do some speculation on that later.
Yeah, I do think at some point there'll be, I do think race seasons and all this, like, hopefully will come back eventually. It's just such a good opportunity for community building, so we'll see.
100%. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to get that wildest thing out of the way first. Now we can just, you know, be organic. I know, Sylver, you wanted to elaborate a little bit on what Dreamcore was saying earlier with all his thoughts, you know, the stuff that he learned from going to LA, playing it for himself for the first time, and having those fears assuaged. We can chat about that a little bit. We can give you some time, Sylver. Dreamcore, anything from the LA event that you wanted to point out? I know you started in Act 1, you played the Mercenary, the Warrior. If you want to share some deeper impressions here, go for it with everybody in the chat.
Yeah, so I started on the Mercenary, and the Mercenary did feel pretty weak early on. So I'll give that warning to anyone who is going to look to pick up Mercenary on early access launch. If they haven't done any balance there, that class does feel quite weak in the early levels. But just stick it out, because both Havoc and Big Ducks played Mercenary at the event that I was at, and they both shared the exact same insight there, that it felt weak early on. I'd say the first sort of 5 to 10 levels feels a little bit weak, and then as soon as it starts to get access to a few extra gems and a few extra supports, it just suddenly just goes crazy, and then it's really quick. So it's early on it's struggling a little bit. They may have just done a little bit of balance to make it feel a bit better, but that's. I basically played that for a while, and then there was like a bit of a buffet thing going on, like in the event hall, and I sat on the same table as Octavian, which was really nice, and just like chatted to Octavian about mechanics and stuff and what they were doing in PoE2. And then after I had spoken to a few people about the Merc being, feeling a bit weak, I decided, right, I'm just going to reroll Warrior, because that's just my thing. Like I do enjoy like that kind of play style. And Warrior was so much stronger in that early section. You can actually see in my video, like I'm playing, fighting the Devourer on the Merc, and it's just taking so long to kill. And then the Warrior, I just arrive at the Devourer and just one-shot it, like no problem at all. It just gets wrecked, right? So it's just one of those. It's just a balance thing, and also it's a case of whenever you have those classes that are more reliant on like the weapon to deal damage, if you get an early game upgrade, like within the first few levels, you really feel it. I mean,
yeah.
If you guys watched that Havoc video, which was a great video, by the way, I recommend everyone should watch that, about his kind of impressions of playing Path of Exile 2 in the early events. Obviously, he's probably going to release another one now that he's played in this event, and sort of talk a little bit about that. But just it's the little things in the early game that make a big difference. Like that, getting that modifier that's like 2 or 3 regen, for example, means that you now don't have to use that one extra life flask you used during a boss fight. Because Path of Exile 2 does really feel like a war of attrition. And I've heard that from everybody, and I can confirm that is exactly what it feels like, at least early on. Recovery is one of the biggest issues that any build is going to face. And when I was looking at those Ascendancy reveals yesterday, one of the things that really stood out to me is that some of the Ascendancies have really good recovery, and that's like one of the only things on the node, right? So, for example, like the Blood Mage, the first node that you have to pick, you actually have to pick it. You can't. The whole node starts with that thing, so you must pick it. And that one, it makes it so when you kill enemies, it drops blood orbs, and those blood orbs then heal you, and obviously it adds a life cost to your skills. That's an example of recovery. Meanwhile, the Chayula focused monk has instant mana leech, and then it recovers energy shield based on that mana leech, which is another form of recovery, right? These things, in the context of PoE1, if that's the only modifier on the Ascendancy, they sound kind of weak. But in the context of PoE2, I can tell you now that they will feel amazing, because recovery is a really big problem.
It solves that puzzle in your character with the Ascendancy, freeing you up to put all damage and other stuff on your other gems and gear and everything. Yeah, definitely. I love it. And it allows them a lot more room to expand with those other Ascendancies that they're going to release for these classes and for the unreleased classes. It's still shocking to me. We can talk about Ascendancies more, but 12 of 36. We're not even halfway there. And it just seems like there's so many novel concepts. A Chronomancer. Who predicted that? Was that Dreamcore that was talking about a Chronomancer? Who was that?
No, that was Sylver.
Sylver?
So the one that I was talking about, that I predicted, was the Witch Hunter, because I always said, as soon as they added the Merc, I was like, they're absolutely going to add a Van Helsing style class. Like, there's no way that you're not going to do that,
Definitely.
But it actually ended up being a lot less Van Helsing style than I thought it would be. But that still looks like a really cool class.
Yeah, there's there's so much going on with the thematic range that they're creating. They talked about this with Ziggy D, but like is really, really cool that they're willing to push it out. And like the Gemling Legionnaire, and basically just having an ascendancy that, you know, just affects the gems that you have and the skills, and you know, it's really, really, really interesting. The thing with like instant, going back to what you're saying about instant leech and stuff, like because we have dodge roll, and essentially, and they talked about this as well with like Mark was talking about this with the way they design bosses and like pinnacle encounters and things, that dodge roll is a really important part of like, you know, dodging a sequence of explosions or something like that, and they're timing this stuff around dodge roll. And so, you know, it's very like Hades or something in that sense. They're like really designing this stuff as like a rhythm combat, and that you have like a lot of mechanical and skill-based interactions or like response time. So I think that's why then recovery is such a big deal, because you can mitigate things through your actions. If you then have really good recovery and a good mechanical mitigation level of player skill, I think you're going to be like the monk, like you're saying, with effectively instant energy shield leech. I think he's going to feel crazy. Like if you dodge roll a couple of things and then get your DPS in, that DPS window is also going to be your recovery window. Yeah, it's wild. But what they're doing with the ascendancies is so cool. Like time stop, it was, you know, all the way back in your interview with Jonathan when you were trying to sort of like tease out of him, oh, so what is this ascendancy that's very powerful? I knew it was time stop. Like I knew that they back then, but you got to be careful about saying this stuff, right? But that was what inspired me to make the Mystic and the whole like temporal rift. I was like, yeah, they're gonna bring back temporal rift because as an ascendancy point, because it's so perfect mechanically for the way that PoE2 is designed. Like, okay, I've dodged this thing, but I didn't dodge that, and I need my mana back, and I want to be back in this position. It's so tactical. And so to see that was absolutely incredible. They're doing some really, really cool stuff, but I was so surprised, like you said, Dream, that they've added a node with the Blood Mage where you have to take it. You know, we did that in one of the designs with the Chieftain like design that we did, and I thought this is crazy. This is a bit weird, making people change, choose something, but it's a very clever way of immediately making the class have a fundamental mechanic that makes it unique. They're going really weird, like you said with the Witch Hunt. You know, the whole Van Helsing thing. The fact that you can make bosses cooldown slower. That's brilliant. That's such a fundamental thing. The only question I've got for you guys around this stuff that I did think yesterday is also with the Witch Hunter with the Decimate ability, right? So you can essentially, you roll randomly up to 30% of the monster's life in one hit potentially. Stuff like that makes me think, if I'm running a party, like if I'm running like, you know, high-end content, how am I not going to have, on a pinnacle boss, how am I not going to have a Witch Hunter in the party? How am I not going to have a Blood Mage that can, you know, do this debuff or that debuff? Do we end up getting into this weird MMO-y space where you're like, okay, in order to efficiently run, you know, the prisoner, Uber Prisoner or whatever this boss is in the temple, it's like, you have to have this 6-party setup, and you get a bit weird, like, MMO problem. What do you think?
I gotta say, I mostly play SSF, right? And in that Q&A, Mark was saying that they think they've created like the best SSF experience in PoE2, which I'm super excited to play, and I kind of got that impression anyway from the way that the content is handled in the endgame, which is really nice. But I've got to say, I'm a bit concerned for Trade League, for the guys playing Trade League, that group play is too overpowered. And I've had this opinion for a while, ever since I saw the revive mechanic, and they kind of discussed this a little bit, you know, about how
they've nerfed it, right?
If you die if you're playing solo and you die, you that's it, right? Like you can't. The boss gets reset, the map's over, whatever. If you're in a group and you die, you have to all die, right? All of you have to wipe. Otherwise, you can just kind of revive each other, bounce off of each other, this kind of thing. And you've just brought up, like, what you've just said makes the whole thing even worse, because it's like, if for example, let's just say, right, someone's playing a witch hunter, but they're like a fully support based character. They just have a bunch of auras, so they don't do any damage, but they have a bunch of auras. But they can still contribute up to 30% of the boss's life in damage just right at the start. They're just bang, like there's the boss is already 70% life, and now everybody else is doing the damage, right? And they're just there as like a buff. So
Dream, can I jump in on this very quickly on this one, right? I think I agree with you. Obviously, I think we're on the same page here. However, the one thing I have just thought is, how great is it that they're pushing the boundaries for early access, and they will, like, this stuff will be chopped and trimmed. So if it turns out that the meta becomes this thing, then they'll just change it. But thank God they're willing to go a bit wild with it first, right?
Oh, would yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, I think overall it's going to be a testing period anyway, early access. It doesn't really matter if there's going to be like broken builds and things like that, because that's the whole point of having early access. They're going to squash any bugs. You know, they're going to fix any things. If anything's overly ridiculous, they're going to sort it out. But it's just a concern that I had that party play, because party play has historically been a problem for the Path of Exile 1 economies, and it in my mind it seems like PoE2 party play is even more OP compared to solo play. So that's just a thought I had. I mean, Darth Microtransactions was talking about, you know, how back when he first played the game, right, at one of the events, he was talking about how you would just have like an aura bot that you then pull along, because the way our co-op worked is that whenever you move on to the next screen, it just like pulls the character along. If they're let's say they're AFK, they're just stationary, right? So you just have an aura bot that you're just like dragging around behind you, just like giving you a bunch of buffs. Which obviously obviously that's something that they're not going to have in the game. But that was a pretty funny thing early on.
Yeah,
it's definitely going to be fascinating watching all this play out on early access. I'm sure the first people to beat the new pinnacle, right?
Oh, you can't revive in maps. What about in bosses?
You can't revive in bosses either. Yep, so that was cleared up. If you die in a party in a boss fight,
revive, then?
I think you're dead the entire time. During the campaign, you can.
Only in the campaign?
Yeah, that's only true, the campaign.
Yep. I was going to say they've nerfed it recently. So that was Mark's
someone just said
thing.
You can revive in bosses.
So
on campaign only. Most definitely.
I think it's probably campaign only. That would make sense, yeah. If it's campaign
Mark said
only,
it yesterday.
That would make sense.
Mark said it yesterday, and it was a recent change. And now in the campaign,
that's a good change.
If you revive multiple times in a row, it takes longer every single time, and then the revive timer resets when you hit a checkpoint. So when you go into a new boss arena or something.
That's a good change. I like that change, especially in bosses and maps.
Definitely.
Bosses especially, because bosses would be the abuse case, right? But I like that. It's a good change.
Just on that as well, they also noted that the boss life multiplier is more than the how Mark described it as n number of players, right? So if you've got 3 players in the group, you might have a 380% life multi rather than 300.
Yeah.
And that I think is the combo efficiency mitigation, essentially.
Yeah, that's deliberate thing. I think they've actually got something similar to that in PoE1, because the problem is once you start like adding players together, it's not that they're, you know, both dealing 1 times their damage each. It's their auras are then stacking, you know, different things are then stacking up, so that it's more than their single effects combined.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be fun, guys.
It's gonna be fun, because you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get on, do a Still Sane pod, and break the game together, you guys. All right. I call being Witch Hunter. Okay. Okay.
Oh, okay. I call sword, 2-hand sword Chronomancer. That's that is my first build.
I have no idea. I was initially set on jumping onto the warrior on launch, but and there is some really cool stuff. I particularly like the Warbringer Ascendancy. I think that looks really fun. But
I knew you'd be war crying.
The blood mage is just crazy, and also the chaos monk is just crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Some power returns. Energy shield is life.
The blood mage pathing to going down the left side of the tree and going towards like the warrior area. Because so here's a bit of a leak. Bit of a leak, guys.
Yes.
Oh no.
There
I was going to ask about this.
There is actually some life on the tree. Not much, but there is some life on the tree. That's something that they changed fairly recently. It's not very much at all, but the thing you got to look at it in the context of PoE2 and not in context of PoE1. So, for example, there's like a notable that gives you 3% max life, right? And they give you some regen, I think, as well. And there's a few of those in the warrior area of the tree. There is a few elsewhere as well, but those nodes are so incredibly strong if you want to stack life. Like, you got to look at it that there's going to be more flat life in PoE2 and way less life multipliers, which means that any of those life multipliers that you can get are so valuable.
Yeah.
So
have you noticed the crit bonus damage numbers are super low as well, right? Like crit multi seems quite low on a lot of the items.
So the reason why that is because it scales differently now.
Right.
Yeah, in PoE1 you only get, like, baseline, you get an extra 50% damage, right? If you crit. So, like, if you crit, you get 150% of your damage. Like, that's the base. In PoE2 the base is 200%. So you get an extra. You basically double your damage baseline.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the multipliers are working differently as well in PoE2. They've changed it up quite a bit. I think that multi was a bit of a problem in PoE1. It was so easy to stack. Like, a crit character would have like 600% multi in the end game. Like, what even is that?
Yeah. Yeah, now, exactly. Yeah, when the numbers become meaningless, right? Sorry, go on, Troy.
Now, Dreamcore, I know that there's probably a video coming out detailing this, because I know you were a very astute Path of Exile player and you studied the passive tree while you were in LA. Do you have any one keystone that maybe we haven't seen yet that you wanted to highlight, or one that's returning that you just wanted to talk about for a moment?
So I will have a video. So I've got, in my footage, I've got every single passive tree notable and every single keystone, all of them.
Goated.
Good.
And there's a lot of crazy stuff on the passive tree that people are not going to be expecting. Like, I think people think the passive tree is like really bland, which is what we were kind of led to believe, by the way. That the passive tree was very bland, right? That it was going to be like really generic because of the way they're doing scaling, because of the way they're doing conversion, things like that. Like, we were led to believe that was the case. But there's some really weird nodes on the tree that I'm looking at them thinking, like, what is that? There's a node, so that this is not a keystone, but there's a notable. I think it's either in the shadow area or the ranger area. So over on that, like, Dex int kind of half over there. And what it does is when you spend a power charge, it doubles the effects of that spend. That's just what it does.
Like all the effects?
Yeah, it doubles the effect. So, like, if a skill has like 100% more damage when it spends a power charge, it now has 200% more damage. Like, it's actually just completely bonkers.
How about the lightning ability from the quarterstaff with the big AoE, even more power charge?
Falling Thunder. Yeah.
Falling Thunder. So the AoE would get even bigger?
Yep.
Oh
that one is insane. So
that's going on my amulet as a monk.
Yeah, that's the anoint, right? That's the delirium emotion anoint.
Yeah, so that is absolutely insane. And there's a lot of nodes like that on the tree that are really weird. Like, there's a node on the witch area, which is, I'm trying to remember what the numbers were.
I don't want you to spoil your video. I didn't want to go too deep.
Yeah. There's a notable that gives you 60% increased maximum energy shield. It has a downside, but it gives you 60% increase. That's like three big notables in PoE1, right? 60%.
If this power weighting is evenly distributed around the tree, though. Like, if, imagine you can toggle the power node in POB, right? Like, they have these back-end kind of like tools, right? To, like, I guess, work out relative power. If they are evenly like weight painted essentially around the tree, then it's not really a problem, right? Because you're offering equal opportunity cost across the tree. which is amazing for us.
Yeah, I think why they've done that. So I noticed that and they actually talked about this before, about the design of the tree. They want it to be so that, towards the middle of the tree where the classes start, the nodes are very, very bland and just like basic. And as you get out to the edges, there's all this weird stuff that starts happening, like what I just said, right? That was one of those outer nodes. Just like really strong node that is kind of game changing.
Love that.
In terms of keystones, so there is one, right? So we had the one that's been leaked for ages is Unwavering Stance, right? The one that stops your dodge roll. It like cancels your dodge roll. You can't use it anymore. And then you have double stun threshold, right? So you basically, I mean, on a life stacking, but you're probably going to be basically immune to stuns with that. That's crazy. On that, so on the exact same location where that is, on the opposite side, there's another keystone that changes your dodge roll. And what it does is it stops your dodge roll from providing avoidance frames. So, you no longer avoid projectiles and strikes in that small period at the start. But it makes it so that you take 30% less damage from hits for the entire dodge roll. So it's basically, if you, on a character that has way better mitigation and recovery, it's going to be a lot more powerful because you're going to be able to tank slams with the dodge roll.
I was going to say, it counts AoE as hits in PoE2, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you're going to be able to tank slams with the dodge roll, basically, on a character that has like a stronger recovery and mitigation. Like, because you got to think, like, the dodge roll is really good if you're, especially a character that doesn't have good recovery. Like, you can just avoid hits and then you're not getting much chip damage, right? But yeah, just being able to have like less damage taken, that's pretty good.
That's such a cool option for players that don't want to lean into the mechanical like side of high level content, like that Zesh fight. We who are one. Oh man. We haven't even talked about content, guys. Like we're talking about
that
like
boss is crazy. I have footage of Octavian killing that boss 100% to 0, and it's absolutely epic. Like the sound, like the music in that fight. Like, all of the abilities that the boss has is just crazy. By the way, the sound design in Path of Exile 2 is absolute magic. Like, it's so good. I can't believe how good those guys are on the sound design team. All of the abilities are just so crisp. Like, it just works. It just flows seamlessly together. You just have the sound is so good.
Get new speakers, get new headsets, get ready. Got 2 weeks to do it, okay?
Yeah, and we should have known when they did the sound and like the audio talk. The two guys did the audio talk at ExileCon 2023, and they were like, yeah, you see how we're like dynamically mixing this and like EQing it based on like the reverb of the area, and you're like, you guys have cooked. Like you've just been left in your studio in the dungeon, you guys with like pots and pans and loads of like water and banana skins.
Yeah, man. I know. Badger's on the team. Dominic on Twitter. Kane is the lead of that team. They all are very, very excited for us to see the breadth of the entire game and how it all meshes together. All the different like monster voices and abilities mashing together at Endgame. Okay, fine, we're doing it. Dream, thank you for going to LA. Awesome stuff. We're hopping into Endgame though, man. Endgame. 400 unique monster types. Mashed together every single waystone. What the hell is that going to create? The combinations, the rare monster modifiers on top of those, like, I don't think we're ready for what we're about to face in Endgame. What are your guys' thoughts? Just initial overview of the Atlas, of all the different coalescing systems, how they decided to not finish the campaign because, hey, all our competitors always receive complaints about the end game being bare bones. We received those complaints when we released Path of Exile 1. Let's just buck the trend and not finish the campaign and just go all in on Endgame. It's crazy.
Yeah, so many people called it the like double 3-act playthrough. Like I think that was on your bingo card, right? Or it was on the community card. And like, what a great move. And they were like, this was several months ago, and we're sitting here speculating about Act 4 and they're like, you know nothing. I really love the high level of randomness they're talking about. From, Mark said the variance as a placeholder number. He said, instead of it being 100 to 200 monsters, it's like 100 to 800 effectively, right? Like in terms of density. The mob type being really random, the procedural map generation being much more random and variable. I think that's just going to make replayability a lot better for these kind of things that we're jumping into. And then I think it also, because they've gone more that way with it in terms of RNG, I think, they only showed us the Island of Beasts or whatever it was, right? The untouched
Untainted
island,
Paradise?
the unique map thing. Yeah, that was it. Yeah. And I think they're going to be able to go much more curated and interesting with like unique maps with it on the atlas of maps or whatever. What are we calling this? It's the atlas, right? We're just calling it the
atlas in Rayclast. It's in the world, so we did kind of call that Sylver when we were chatting. It's
it's called the world map, right? When you open it, like when you open the map device, it says the world map.
Yeah, is that the one that we got right, Dreamcore, when we were chatting?
Yeah,
nice.
like exploring the world.
Yeah,
is kind of what they're going for there.
That's so cool.
Well, I guess is the idea of it that it's like fragments in time in Rayclast. I assume that's kind of what they're going for, where it's like the atlas is kind of like you're traveling to like different sections of, or like maybe even different realities or whatever, right?
I don't even know.
Timey-wimey, isn't it?
It's
wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was really clear whether it's actually in Rayclast or whether it's like I don't know.
Mark did say that the map is Rayclast, but where, how, we don't know. We do know the endgame NPC, spoilers, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, is Doriani. Yeah, that's the person helping us travel. And we also saw Doriani was a boss. Doriani lived thousands of years ago. So what's going? It has to be timelines. They're just ripping stuff from last Epoch, you guys.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like, I am not mad about it at all. There's so much that last Epoch have done right. They just haven't had the 10 years to cook and be in the position that GGG are. So yeah, the end game. I mean, where do you want to start, right? Like, I think one of the things. Let's talk about Trials of Ascension, right? This system of you through the campaign, you get exposed to new leagues, new mechanics. So we've got Sanctum as for the Trial of Sekima in Act 2, and then we've got Ultimatum coming back, Ultimatum 2.0 as the Trial of Chaos, right, in Act 3. And I mean, Ziggy really hard baited it, right? And it was almost it's seeming very likely that we're going to be getting Trial of the Ancestors coming in Act 4 and that Trial of Ascension. And I like the fact you get to choose what type of content, which is the whole endgame thing, which they're doubling down on, which is amazing. But even in the campaign, you're choosing what kind of content you want to progress through. Is phenomenal. It's everything that I hoped they would do with this system. I think it's really, really clever. It brings the leagues back and scales them into endgame. I think the last thing I would say on this that I think is really cool is, and Ziggy kind of called it, and I think Jonathan was a little bit wary of it being pigeonholed this way, but it's a really clever way of taking 3 very similar mechanics, which are round-based progression systems. So, Sanctum obviously has flaws, and you make choices which affect the following content, and you can essentially choose how deep you want to go. Exactly the same with Ultimatum. How far do you want to push it? Do you want to go to the next round? And the same with Trial of the Ancestors. You're in a tournament. Do you want to go and fight the next round? It's like this self-gating content that you get to push as far as you want. And it's so elegant. I'm going to use the word. It's so elegant that they've put that into the 3 kind of Trials of Ascension. Whereas a lot of the other content doesn't fit that model. It's kill things in a circle. The more speed, clear based kind of progression, content progression and stuff. So yeah, I just think they've nailed it with bringing back so much content, but making it feel more embedded. I don't know. What do you think?
Go for it, Dream.
I agree. Yeah, I think the idea of being able to choose how you ascend is is just a cool concept overall. And something, so Chaos and Coffee in the chat there, we were actually discussing that in my Discord yesterday about like the thing with Labyrinth in PoE1, I think is why that's such a weird topic, and like some people hate it, some people love it. You know, most people would just like want to get out of the way, right, and don't go in there again. If it existed in PoE1 that it was like this, where you could choose how you wanted to ascend, and that was one of the options, everyone would love it, because it's like if you don't love it, you just don't play it, right? So I think Chaos and Coffee's right. It would be pretty cool to see like the OG Labyrinth come back as like an option. You know, have Izaro in PoE2. Like that's such a cool character. It's an awesome boss as well. They could make, you know, such a cool boss out of that. So
Most definitely.
In terms of those trials, yeah, I really enjoy the way they've done that. Like turning Ultimatum into this like trial system out of map mechanic is just
Beautiful.
Such a great idea.
It's beautiful, and I need a point of clarification from the two experts here. Can you fully ascend using either, or do you have to complete each to get your ascension points? Because I thought it was you have to complete each. Am I wrong?
I think you can fully ascend by just doing one. I think that was the way I interpreted it. What about you, Dream?
I think you can choose, yeah.
Yeah.
I am spreading misinformation on YouTube in my latest video. Oh no.
Well, to be fair, that's kind of how I thought it. Like from my playtime in LA, like from what I heard about Ascension, that was how I thought it worked as well. I thought that you had to do like, you know, you had to start off with the first trial was like the Sanctum style thing. Yeah, the second one. Yep. Then you had to go to the trial of the Chaos God. Then whatever was next, right? Which obviously we did at the time, we didn't know what it was. But I think how it works is you can just choose like whichever one you want to play.
Yeah, I thought you just get the first. You can get the points from anywhere. Like you can just choose to do the Trials of Chaos first, then go back to Sakema. But if you can just do it over and over again, that's cool too. I'm fine with either way. Hopefully, people who don't like the first two options like the third option.
Yeah, I think in reality it'll end up being, for most players, I think this is really the cleverness of what they've done, is they've said you can do what you want, but I think for most players you will probably end up just doing the first level of all three. The question I guess I was curious about is, do you say there's 4 tiers of each of these systems, right? Which is like your 4 tiers of ascendancy points, your 4 pairs of points. Can you do the first tier of each of them and gain 6 points, so that you essentially only have to then do tier 2 of one of them to gain all 8? Or is it like a, you know, flat hierarchy where it's like you have to get to tier 2, 3, 4 to get those points? That's something I don't know.
Yeah, I think the difficulty will be based on like which ascendancy points you want to unlock.
Right. Like Merc.
I think that would make the most sense to me anyway. Like it doesn't matter which system you're going for. Like if you're getting your tier 2 points, you need to get to this particular part of whatever mechanic you're going for to actually unlock it.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. Yeah.
And then in the end game, these turn into literal endgame mechanics with their own progression systems and unique rewards. And that's what I want to talk about next, to get your thoughts on this. They have gone all in. All these different leagues, and we'll call them leagues, but they're actually just endgame content systems in Path of Exile 2. And the Atlas and the Trials, they all have unique rewards. For example, the Trials of Sakema drops jewels. It sounds like those aren't natural drops in Path of Exile 2.
No,
they only drop in that part. What do you guys think about this?
Just to clarify that, I think actually in the Ziggy interview, Mark said they do drop elsewhere in the world. They just drop at a higher rate. Because this was something I was really curious about. And I'm pretty sure in the Ziggy interview, he said jewels drop in the world, but they drop at a higher rate based in the Sakema. And that certain jewels can only come from the highest tier of the Trials of Sakema.
The radius jewels? Okay. Is that what only comes from the trial?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
That was another thing. So, for example, like that was another thing in the LA presentation where like Jonathan was, because obviously they were doing this thing live on the stage. Like Jonathan was just reading out, Octavian was playing and like, you know, loading in and whatever. And they said about, all he said was he showed us the jewels and showed us the radius jewel and stuff, and then he was like, this is, you know, one of those systems where like you have to do this mechanic to get these unique rewards. He didn't like he didn't actually like give us much information. It was just. So I thought it was going to be like that. That makes sense. So some jewels are unique to the trials, right? But I would guess like most of them are probably world drops. But it's like there's like special ones that the radius jewels are crazy. Like crafting your own radius jewels is actually just. We were just discussing how it makes sense that normal jewels drop in the world because if you've noticed on the passive tree, instead of like going out of your way and speccing into a jewel slot, they're actually like in the middle of pathing. Like you just path through a jewel slot, right, to get to somewhere else. So that makes sense that jewels drop in the world because you want people to be able to access jewels fairly easily to just put one in the socket that they're specced into so that they don't have to do the trials if they don't want to, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That makes total sense.
The question I had for you guys is about, like, I'm personally happy about this. I think everyone's going to be happy about this in terms of, like, the higher difficulty stuff, like the tier 4, you've specced into it. You've got the uber boss of each of the different kind of, like, content types. They're giving us some kind of like high variance chase unique, you know, like your megalomaniacs, your watcher's eyes, these kind of these like high variance things, which, you know, reminds me of like, I guess it recaptures that thing of doing like runs, you know, from D2 and this like, I'm just gonna run this, I want to keep running this content to get the best version of this thing. And I'm a bit of a sucker for that like grindy kind of like what, you know, I want to get the best possible watcher's eye, etc., which felt like really difficult to do in PoE1, to be honest. I found, for some reason, I found the way that worked with like getting key access and stuff a bit more like taxing for some reason. So I'm wondering if it will feel different here.
I love the concept that they've implemented. It's not in PoE1. I think it's done in PoE1 with the Ubers and the non-Ubers. It looks like in here there's a sliding scale of tier 1 difficulty for bosses to tier 4. And tier 4 is where those modular, as they called them, drops occur. Your megalomaniacs, your watcher's eyes, your forbidden flame and flesh. Did you hear that drop? I wonder if something like that might be returning in PoE2. And it has. Oh my gosh, what if you can get a demon form on the other witch ascendancy, the blood mage? Oh,
that would be great. That would actually be crazy. Like that would be insane.
Because the blood mage helps with life regen, and the demon form, what is it? It penalizes your life regen, and it slowly deteriorates you the longer you're in it.
And it all scales with spells. Like there's like spell crit on the blood mage, and then the demon form has spell damage, and I think it's cast speed or something like that.
Oh, wow. That'd be wild. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, and I think it's nice as long as there's a reasonable drop rate for these uniques. Do you think we're gonna get 1%, 2% drop rates like Nimbus in Path of Exile 2 for all this high-end stuff, or is the difficulty of the content going to be that gate? RNG or difficulty? What do you guys think?
It's going to be a hybrid, right? It'll be the difficulty, of course, is one thing, but eventually you'll scale into that difficulty. You'll sort of learn the mechanics, and you'll get the right item set. But then I think the way that they'll probably do it, or what I would say is the best way to do it, is just have the variance high enough that you can increase the drop rate. So your chance of getting like the Giga Jewel is low because you've got, you know, like 20 different variables that, you know, like multiply together or something. You know, or the roll ranges are high enough. I think that's like the way that you then allow high drop rates, but you're just like, you know, and it's going to have to be somewhere in the middle because you don't want to drop them like candy and then you're like, another one, you know, another bad one probably, which is the PoE1 problem of rares. So yeah, somewhere in the middle.
I expect there'll be some really rare, unique drops. Like I do expect to see that like 2%, 1% drop rate on some of the really crazy stuff. But I think what they'll do is they'll have like, you know, a boss might have 4 unique drops. You know, like how the King in the Mist was in the Affliction League, where he dropped, I think it was like 5 things that he dropped, or 4 things. And like right at the top there was that like life stacking staff that I don't think anybody really ended up using it or whatever, but it was really rare. It was like 2% drop or something compared to the body armor, which was like 35% or 40% drop rate. So that's kind of how I could see them doing it, where when you kill a boss, you're basically almost guaranteed to get one of those like boss uniques, but it's going to be very, very weighted in terms of like which ones you get.
Yeah.
Did you see that there's the the last flame, which is like essentially the sanctum, like
the original
no
sin?
hit run.
Yeah. That.
So the item was called Temporalis.
Yeah,
which
I saw that. Yeah.
Opens up some interesting thoughts about time manipulation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's gonna be busted.
That's going to be a T0 mega difficult thing to get. Obviously, I assume like the original sin, right?
Mm-hmm. Something in Endgame that I don't think we saw a ton of yesterday. I spotted it one time. Rare monster modifiers and which ones are making it into PoE2. I saw the mana ring in some of the footage. In PoE2, its effects are changed a little bit, but do you guys think we're going to get a lot of those rare monster modifiers? Or do you think they're going to rely... You think we are?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think that whole design was a PoE2 thing to begin with. I think a lot of people kind of forget that PoE2 was announced a long time ago, and a lot of the stuff that they've added to PoE1 was designed with the intention of PoE2 in mind. Like, we're talking about all the way back when, like, Heist League and stuff, all that stuff was after they announced PoE2. Like, I expect all that stuff to kind of come into PoE2 at some point. I actually kind of expected Heist to be one of the end game systems that they had, like, out of map system mechanics, but that's something that I totally expect to be in the game at some point. But yeah, I think a lot of these things are just, with the monster modifiers, it probably was designed for PoE2 initially, because it also kind of makes more sense in the context of PoE2 compared to PoE1, where you've got these monster modifiers that are... they feel unique when you actually interact with them, and you have more tools to be able to deal with them in PoE2. Like, the way you actually play against those monsters. In PoE1, it's a case of, here's a rare, I'm just going to, like, delete it. Right? Yeah. Or like, in the case of builds where you, like, ZDPS, like, I'm playing a RF Chieftain, right, and I'm actual ZDPS. Like, if I don't get one of those monsters near the rare to explode with Hinakora, I just move on. I'm not going to bother wasting time killing that rare. Whereas in PoE2, I think it's going to feel more like that unique experience. You interact with this monster differently based on its modifiers, and you have more tools to be able to deal with it.
And let's not forget that the way that you clear maps is by dealing with these rares, right? It's like most of the maps that don't have a boss is kill all the rares in the area. So they're going to want to make those interactions feel a bit more punchy and a bit more interesting. So it doesn't just feel like, monolith clearing or, like just like map blasting.
Exactly. And only 1 in 4 Waystones have actual map boss fights. That's interesting. And if people were paying close attention, the map boss fights in the end game completely revamped from the campaign. The environments and the abilities are very different. There were some snippets in the gameplay trailer of the Act 2 Colossus boss, not in his typical arena. It's now in a volcano, essentially. And there's all these fire things flying around and stuff. Oh, it looks so good. I cannot wait. Yeah. They have so many potential variations there. So,
and what a good foundation, like, to build on. This like foundation. I think that was the thing that got me, was like one of the most calming / exciting things is, like they keep saying, this is just the beginning. It's not even really the beginning. It's the pre-beginning of PoE2, right? We're in beta, right? Essentially, or we will be. And like this map system, this new like scaling endgame system, it feels like a fantastic like platform to build off. And you can imagine 3-4 years down the line, we don't just have towers, we have caverns, or we have, like whatever. Like, when does Delve come in? Maybe not, because of the nature of the map now. It's kind of similar to Delve. But then, like you're saying about Heist, that Heist and Incursion, I think, are the two things. And Jonathan, keeps mentioning that he loves Incursion. I love Incursion. And I think Heist and Incursion are those things that are quite content heavy, potentially. And so that it makes sense that they're not just like, they weren't the first things on the list to get in. But you can imagine, right? Like, you come across temples, like the Ziggurat where we start, but you come across temples and they're your incursions, right? Or you come across, like, there's like like different faction hideouts, like cities, but like, and you go into cities and you have to sneak through, and there's actual stealth gameplay. There's just so much they can build on this, and I'm glad they haven't rushed to try get every league back, because there's certain things which I think, like a good roast dinner here in the UK require a long cook time. You got to take your time with it. So yeah.
Totally true. And we already see some of these unique old league mechanics that took inspiration from earlier in Path of Exile 1 in PoE2. What I immediately thought of when I saw Beyond on the world map of Path of Exile 2 was the old Elder Shaper blob system, it seems. These areas have this corruption on them, and it seems to move as you progress through. It's very, very interesting. And all the maps inside of it will have the Beyond demons spawning in on you. Looks like Beyond bosses. You're totally right. It's such a good just canvas for them to draw on for the next decade plus. Oof.
And then also the microsystems within maps, right? So we've got these microsystems like precursor artifacts, which are like shrines 2.0, and they're kind of essentially taking the Orichallium like Baidat shrines inside settlers, and just making like shrines interesting and have actual like mobs around them, right? And strong boxes are back, and like it seems like there's some weird shadow enclosing thing that was happening with the strong box when they used it.
And that was crazy. There's
really weird.
Like the strongbox encounters, I think they've tried to make them more. It's something more that you need to like consider, because in PoE1 it's just like you see strongbox, click strongbox, kill monsters. It all happens within a second, and then that's it. Yeah. It looks like they've tried to make it more of an encounter. The same thing with the shrines. Like the shrines, the idea of shrines being like a little bit more. You kind of take longer to deal with those monsters and get a more, an interesting buff there. And like the strongbox is, you open the strongbox and there's like a whole encounter going on. That you almost looks like ritual, like you're closed off from the outside of the map, and you have to like deal with those monsters in the strongbox, which is that's cool. I like that. As long as the strongboxes are rewarding, then people will do them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now we have a ton of other stuff to talk about. But I want to wrap up Endgame discussion talking about a mystery. There is a new Uber Pinnacle boss that they went into and they really hinted at. They showed some red tower with this crazy stuff inside. I don't even know, like ruins. And they said, oh yeah, somebody's inside here. You need these 3 stones that you get from Uber Act bosses that you reach by killing their lieutenants and da-da-da-da-da. Who cares? Who's inside that tower? Who's the Uber boss? What is this? What's going on?
So I would like, first off, huge shout out to the environment team, because the environment there makes it feel epic, right? Like the going up to these giant doors, this like huge maze, and I love the line that that Jonathan said, I think it was like, are you trying to keep someone out or try and lock someone in, right? Like that kind of thing. And the whole like vying for factions and like getting keys seems like a fun kind of thing that they could build on. But who's in there? I would love to say Zana, because that was just like the fun Easter egg thing to say. Like that, for some reason Zana's been locked up, and it's because of like, but I just think after the presentation yesterday, there's no chance. I think they're leaving all of the Eldritch Atlas story stuff in the past, and it's like, I think it's going to be an entirely new thing that will be the big bad that probably leads into a lot of story arcs going forward. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a completely unknown new character. There's no comeback thing. That's my take. What about you, Dream?
So, they could obviously go in a lot of directions with this thing. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting, when they introduced it, they said that it's something that came out of the ground. So this is something that's been buried, perhaps, from like a long time ago in Ray class. Maybe it was buried at some point. So it could be something maybe it's something like Val themed or something, right? Because that's like the whole theme that they're going on with like Doyani helping you explore and stuff. So perhaps it's something like that. My initial impression of it was going to be that it's some kind of Beyond thing, because like I think that ultimately when we get through to Act 4, 5, and 6, there's going to be like a heavy Beyond theme towards the end, because that's just seems like the direction that they want to push it in. But I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure. Like, it could be like, it could be it could be that they've just decided to bring back like a PoE1, like an iconic PoE1 boss, and like do a new spin on it. Like, for example, you know, just make it the Shaper, but it's like completely redesigned. It's like crazy. It's just, you know, this epic encounter. Because as soon as you walk in there and you get like that voice line that pops off, and it's like Shaper talking to you, but it's like the voice line's slightly twisted compared to PoE1, you know, and it's like he's gone crazy. I don't like, who knows? It could be anything really, but I don't know.
Try what you're saying.
Well, they did say that it was the ruin, or this structure that we find that it's locked within, looks so similar to all the towers that are helping us explore this version of the Atlas. So it must be something ancient that built these towers, buried beneath the ground. My mind went to Crucible and the Molten One,
Titans,
but I don't know if they do that or not. I don't know if the Colossus is a Titan like the Molten One is, and the Titans were the people who forged the world. But they're like more ancient, or as ancient as Kalandra. So maybe it's them. Maybe they had complete domain over Rayclast, and we're going to fight one of the Titans that's been locked below, and it's the Molten One from Crucible. I think that'd be kind of interesting. It looked a lot like Cirrus's Citadel portals as well, so I instantly was like, oh my god, Cirrus. You know, but it's totally not Cirrus. That'd be funny, though. It would be really funny if Cirrus was the uber pinnacle for Path of Exile 2 redesigned.
I mean, that would be pretty cool. Like, you got to think about it from their perspective as well. Like, Cirrus is one of those bosses which is always, like, people have always been asking for a redesign of that fight in PoE1. They've always asked for it. Like, they hate the phasing. They hate the like bugs that exist in that fight that, you know, that have just seemingly been there since launch. So it's like that would be pretty. I mean, it did look very serious, like all those like dark red, like lightning type stuff all over the tower, and
the towers itself, like the Citadel. It looked very. It looked like his portals to Oriath when you fight him. So that's what it reminded me of instantly. But I don't think there's any way lore wise they could justify that. Given who Cirrus was, he was just some nobody that, you know, fell in love with Zana and went into the Atlas. That's it. He's not some ancient being, right?
The idea, I think, of like this, like, why have they changed the name of shrines to precursor artifacts, right? Like, I think there's something in that of like the word precursor, I think might become a thing. We have these towers that are like precursor tower. I know they're not called that, but it's like essentially like you're saying, they're these relics of a past world. Maybe it's Titans, maybe it's not. Tyler, interestingly, in the chat, just said about on the table. I'm sure a lot of people noticed this. There was a book called The Lord's Labyrinth on the table next to the PoE2 art book on the coffee table. There was 3 books on top of each other. There was a PoE2 art book. There was, I can't remember the other one. There was The Lord's Labyrinth, and he was like in chat, he was essentially saying, yeah, what if it's something like
you think that was like an Easter egg that they left? I think that's just them making the interview look nice, because like that was one of the books, right? They did like a while back, the Lord's Labyrinth book.
It could be, but what if there's some kind of like it, because it is a maze, right? There's a maze outside the tower. Like the tower comes out the ground, and there's like some sort of large maze.
No.
There is a maze, yeah.
And I'm not saying it's going to be a Zaro, but what if there was? And I think just from like a
I would be totally hyped if it was
view,
Uber Izaro. That would be sick. Like that would be crazy, dude.
Baddest voice lines.
But this is the thing, right? How iconic. Look at any GGG thread, right? And Try will be up there. But it's like, look at the, like, with the Azaro lines, right? It's like, we love the Azaro. Everyone loves them. It's like, it's such an iconic thing. And we know that PoE Mobile is going all the way back to, like, that in the past, back to, like, Izaro and that. Izaro, right? Because there was a very specific point in time that Izaro existed. But what... Have we lost stream again? I'm not sure. I'm going to carry on. But yeah, it's not necessarily like that point in time, but the idea of like perhaps like the labyrinth and stuff. I think from a meta point of view, people love. It's like the ultimate ascension. It's like, can you go through this maze and like, you know, prove yourself worthy to the precursors or something like that? I don't know. That's just pure cope and hope at that point, really. It's like
Great guesses.
I think that's a cool idea.
There is actually one interesting thing. The goddess is on the PoE2 logo. You know the labyrinth goddess. She's on the PoE2 logo, right in the middle, at the bottom.
Oh my god!
Have we seen the goddess anywhere in PoE2?
No.
No.
There you go.
Prove you're worthy. Can you imagine? You walk in, the big gates open, and it's like Lab 2.0. You know.
Oh, that would be phenomenal, guys. Those are great guesses.
Okay,
I
one thing.
love it.
Yeah.
Try such. We're like, okay, this can be a 6-hour podcast. Try to keep us on track.
Try. What's your guess? Go on.
No, my guess. I think it's the molten one. That's what I think it was. I already went back. Did you have something else you wanted to add, though, Dream?
No, I wanted to say so. We know a few of the pinnacle bosses for like the league mechanics, right? We know that King in the Mist is going to be the ritual pinnacle boss. We know that Zesht is the breach one. What do you guys have quick guesses for the other ones? For the pinnacle boss of each? Because we know how the system is going to work is that you need to kill the pinnacle boss. It then improves the difficulty of the entire mechanic. And the next time you fight the boss, it's harder. You get Atlas points, right, to spec into that thing. So what do you guys think about, you know, what the pinnacle bosses are going to be for each one? Let's start with Delirium.
Okay. Well, I guess obviously you're going to get Omniphobia and, you know, and... oh my god, what's the other? Why can't I think of the other one?
Kosis.
Thank you. But then I'm guessing you're gonna what's his name?
Tangmazu.
I think it's gonna be. I think you'll do the whole. It'll be the simulacrum, and you'll fight those. You know, Kosis and Omniphobia for like how many waves it is. It might be you know more than 15 or less than 15 in PoE2, and then at the end you then get access to the pinnacle fight with Tangmazu. That'll be pretty crazy.
Okay, go for it. Quick, keep going, Dream. Quick fire them off. So Tangmazu on Delirium.
Expedition.
We've seen it, right? We've seen the fight. It was the night of the Dying Sun or the
Olroth.
Did we see that?
Yeah, we saw
in the presentation.
We saw a teaser of it.
Oh, okay. So okay. I mean, I guess they could be. That might be like they might have the multiple bosses, right? Like they have in PoE1, right? And maybe you just like fight whichever one you find or something.
Hopefully, because they're cool boss fights there, especially Yeah, go on.
Which other ones do we not know? I'm trying to think now.
So you've got the Trial of the Second World, which is going to be the Titans, right? I think we've seen a glimpse of that. Tota, if Tota is the third trial, Hinakura.
Ooh.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe Hinakura, yeah.
Yeah.
We know the Trial Master is the one in the Trial of the Chaos God.
No, they kept saying maybe it's the Trial Master. We don't know. It could be.
No,
might not be.
It has to be.
So,
I'm half expecting somebody else to be in there.
With that because like in the LA presentation, Jonathan was just like, "You'll be able to fight the Trial Master in Endgame." There was no joke. There was no joke there. It was just like because there was the like thing that says Trial Masters, whatever it was.
Tower.
And it was like,
Tower. Trial Master's Tower. Yeah.
Dang it. Oh.
Is there one that they're still missing?
No, that's
the Trial
all
of
of
the
them.
Yeah. And then Breach is Zesht, which is
Trial of the Sekima is I don't think it's those two statue things. I think that's
they said there's a pinnacle boss at the end of the final floor.
Yeah, and and we know what his name is because we saw the unique.
Right. What was his name?
It's called like Zakroth the Eternal or something like that.
Oh, okay. Did we get to see a glimpse of him? I don't think so.
Remembering. I don't think we saw it.
Glad Sanctum's back. Because I'm actually hoping Sanctum's going to be runnable for a lot more people. Now they've changed like the way defense is working with dodge roll mechanics. It's not just going to be like one build that basically hides around the corner with with like mines and stuff is going to run it. It'll be like a lot of builds can run it. Anyway, right. I know you need to carry on to the next section. So
yeah, that was a great endgame discussion. Let's move on to, I guess, Ascendancies and maybe classes. Well, let's first start. Okay, you guys, your early access is tomorrow. What are you starting? What class?
Dream.
So if it's tomorrow and I don't have time to think, I'm just starting warrior because that's the class that I enjoy the most. I think overall, just playing melee and smashing things with the mace. The Warbringer, is it? The Warbringer class is like very like Karui themed. It has, you know, you drop totems, you get like ancestral spirit type stuff. You got like a jade encasing. Also, that class has, I think they showed 3 or 4 of the nodes, and it still has another 5 on top. It has like 11 or some 10 ascendancy nodes or some crazy stuff. It's got loads that are unrevealed, and they're all like, if you take a look at the way the tree's built, it's there's like a node at the top, and one, you know, the totem node goes to one thing. There's another thing that goes up the other side. So it has like Warcry themes. It has totem themes. I wonder what the other theme's going to be, because it feels like they've covered a lot of the kind of mace stun theme in the other one. So I don't think it's going to be anything to do with that. So that looks really fun. Like, you know, like no cooldown Warcries looks really fun.
All of them are like that, right? I looked it all, and there's just all these unrevealed ascendancy nodes. And the mystery is still going to be there on launch on day 1 when people go and ascend for the first time, assuming people don't data mine or anything. And we're going to get to find out all this crazy stuff that we're going to be able to do. Perhaps the skills that we still don't know about, because all the ascendancies, besides maybe the Deadeye, have skills, right? That's crazy. Multiple skills.
Yeah, cool. that was one thing that really stood out to me, is that they've tried to go very kind of unique with the ascendancies, really give them something unique. That's something that in PoE1, it is there. Like there are things that are unique, but over time they've kind of given a lot of the ascendancy power over to items and things like that. Like, for example, we've got the unique jewel that drops from Uber Cortex that gives you like the Inquisitor, you know, consecrated ground lingering thing, right? Like that kind of stuff, right? They over time they've kind of taken ascendancy power and put it on items so that other classes can then get it. The idea of them having these like really specialized spells that exist on ascendancies, that kind of makes me wish that Forbidden Flesh and Flame never exists. Because I've always been someone who thought that it was generally a mistake overall in terms of, you know, like build craft and like diversity of builds and things. It kind of takes away from, if an ascendancy has a really powerful node, you know, and then you can just take it on another ascendancy. It does kind of go against what they were trying to do there with that. So I go on.
Just on the Forbidden Flame and Flesh though, don't you think it's fair that, like, for me, any decent, like any meta Forbidden Flame and Flesh, I've basically never been able to afford.
Well, I play SSF, so this might surprise you guys. I've literally never played a single build with Flesh and Flame, never. Because
me too.
You can't get those jewels in SSF. Like, you literally cannot get those jewels in SSF. You'll never find the same 2. Like, you can play an entire league, you know, it's just not going to happen unless you just have ridiculous luck. And so it doesn't really bother me much. Yeah. But I do see what happens in Trade League. You know, I'm always following like the meta, so to speak, of what's happening with builds and things. And I'm just never been I've never been a fan of like those jewels just kind of squashing build diversity a little bit, because it's just like, you know, here's a cool node. Well, everyone just takes that on, you know, on another class. So that's with the abilities though. I think that makes that even more so, right? Because now you've got this really cool ability that only this class has access to. No other class can get it. To get it, you have to be that class. You know, you can't go one way or the other. You have to be that class. So that's. I mean, look at the time mage, what is it called? Like the thing, the
Chronomancer.
Yeah, the Chronomancer, exactly. The 3 nodes that they show, they're all skills. That's all they are. There's no stats. They're just skills. So you get 3 additional skills on top of your 8 skills you already have, right? And we saw that with like the Gemling Legionnaire. You get another 3 skill slots. So you can have 11 6 links baseline. Like, that is wild.
And then you get max res based on the color of support.
Yeah, that's really
it's
that
like,
is such a cool.
What are the other
really
nodes?
Cool.
Holy, we stalled so long for you, Sylver. What would you start if you could start tomorrow?
Oh my god, it's easy for me. I'm like, I just already know. I'm starting Witch. Sorry, I'm starting Sorceress. I'm pathing down the left of the tree, round to the sort of you know, Marauder duelist area, and I'm going to be going Chronomancer, two-handed sword, and then
you think they're going to be swords? There's not going to be swords in early access.
Well, I'll be, you know, essentially two-handed martial weapon, right? But eventually it will be a sword. And
going two-handed mace.
Yeah, it's going to be just big mace skills with time stop. And like something like that, or you know, I'll go right and maybe go, you know, sort of whatever kind of like more fast hitting attack option we have. But yeah, basically, yeah, it's going to be like a martial Chronomancer will be the thing. I'm going like Chronicles of Riddick. It's going to be it's that whole vibe.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm on the warrior train right now. If I get to choose, and I don't get to choose, chat's going to vote on what I play. But Dream, I mean, your gameplay and then seeing all the gameplay yesterday has convinced me Warrior looks like so much fun.
Yeah,
it truly does.
It is.
It just looks satisfying as well.
That's one of the things that I was talking about with the sound design. It is satisfying. Like those massive slams, they're satisfying. They deal this huge chunk of damage to the enemy. You know, like some of them have these like slow wind ups, and it's just satisfying when you land those big combos.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, because we've talked about Ascendancies throughout today's chat, the unrevealed classes and the classes not making it in. Sounds like Druid might be first on the menu. How fast do you guys think that they're going to get this stuff to us? Do you think it's going to be quick? Do you think it's going to be 3 months, 4 months? Because in the Ziggy D Q&A, they mentioned they don't want there to be more than 3 months between updates. And they want to launch early access, or sorry, they want to launch the full game in 2025. That's their ambition right now. What do you guys think about that timeline and the new content we're going to get?
Yeah, look, we didn't get the announcement yesterday, but ExileCon 2025 I think is going to happen, and it's going to be a massive marketing event for the launch of the game. You know, that's like
my hopium has run dry on that. I think they gotta announce that like a year out. We're almost in December, so they'd have to announce it pretty soon.
Maybe they'll do it for the first major expansion. Yeah, maybe you're right. But regardless, I think the timeline will be like monthly updates. So I think that'll be like the rough cadence will be like every month there'll be some kind of new thing, and it's just whatever they've got done. I think they're approaching it in the best way. It was so nice to hear what like Marcus was talking about yesterday of we're going to dynamically react to what people need, what they want, what's going wrong, and they're just allowing resource, you know, their resource allocation is going to be dynamic and reactive in that way. Obviously they've got a content schedule, but they've said they're a lot of the way with a lot of it. And so I think it's just going to be a case of fighting fires where there's fires, and getting out what they can get out. And I think it would just be like a monthly cadence of like, hey, here's like an extra little thing. And that might be like, you know, it might be nothing. And then the next month there's like 2 things that come out. But I don't think, I thought they were going to give us a roadmap, and I'm really glad they didn't. I think I was an idiot for thinking that. And I'm so glad to sit here and say that, because after listening to them talk about it and explain the actual reality of developing this game, I'm like, yes, that's foolish. It's so foolish to expect them to know.
And they pride themselves on being the best live service game out there. They see themselves as top class. Yeah. And a lot of developers, I thought it was an excellent point that Jonathan brought up. This is their first game release. They joined the team years ago and have been working on Path of Exile 2. They haven't touched Path of Exile 1. They've just been sitting there at the offices, grinding away, making PoE2. And they're going to go into live service mode. How are they going to react? I don't know. I'd be a little scared if I've been working on something for 6 years or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then
they'll
suddenly
be nervous for sure.
Everything changes, right?
And I think a lot of people are going to be nervous to have this large influx of players. Like they've had a lot of, beta testers and people playing at these events and things, but to have like this massive influx of players and then you're all playing at the same time, you get so much more feedback. There's a lot of comments. I expect a lot of it will be positive, but there's always people voicing their opinions in other ways as well, which is just part of the thing, So it's just a case of having to deal with that kind of stuff, and I hope they're prepared. But going back to the updates thing, like how often we'll see updates.
Yeah, I
actually think I don't think we'll get monthly patches. I think that what I expect to see from them is that they're going to patch as and when if they need to patch things. So like if there's this major bug that has to be patched, they'll hotfix it immediately, right?
Yeah.
If there's some like problems or some like balance things where like one thing is just obviously ridiculous compared to something else, they'll do like maybe weekly balance pass with like a few number tweaks and things like that, right? But what I actually expect to see from them is like a 3-month cadence, like big release as if it was a league reveal, but it might not have like the same kind of media representation as a league announcement where they like make it all official and stuff. I think it might be more like raw. They'll do a live stream where they just kind of show like, here's what we're bringing into the game, because it's like this live rolling thing. You got to remember, it's not here's an announcement and then 2 weeks later everyone's playing it. It's here's the announcement, but everyone's still playing right now. So it's like, it doesn't have that same feeling. So what I expect is at the start of March, which will be 3 months, right? It'd be that'll be around 3 months, like from early access launch. I expect to see Marauder and Druid. I think they'll add both of those at the same time. That's the two that they. It kind of felt like they would have had them already. I think they're very close in the background, would be my guess. Because we've already seen like the whole axe throwing thing, like in the in the trailer. We saw Druid ages ago. My guess is with the Druid they had. This is my theory with Druid. Why we don't have it is because I think they announced it before WASD, and now they have to go back and fix all of the transform anthem. Can you imagine like a bear walking backwards with WASD? They have to like fix all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like they have all of these animations that just are completely balked by WASD, right? So it's
a bear rolling backwards, right? Like how do you do that?
There's just a bunch of stuff that they probably had to fix after that point. So like they announced it and then they were probably like, oh no, like what's happened? Like it's just so that's what I expect. I expect to see Druid and Marauder in March.
Do you think that they're going to go back on the quadrupedal bear form and do the typical bipedal bear that all other ARPGs usually have?
Oh,
I don't know.
Hope not.
I hope not.
I don't think so.
I don't think they'll be original. Quad wolf though. Don't you think? I think they'll end up doing like a werewolf, a bipedal wolf. But I don't know. What do you think on that, Troy? You're our druid expert.
I think that they're gonna go full on beast with all their forms. And it's going to be quadrupedal. It's going to look like the wolves that we see in game, but maybe a more rad version, essentially. I don't think they're leaning into the whole were fantasy because it's bear form. It's wolf form. It's not werebear or werewolf. I think they're going all in on the beast. And I really wonder if they have a third transform coming. Because nobody expected the suck witch, okay? Who expected the demon form and the succubus? That was crazy. And that you fly when you're moving around.
Oh man. It's such a good precedent for the long-term like approach of the game that they're willing to do that. Like I fully expect to see like if we're sitting here in 3 years time or on episode like 102 or whatever, right? I'm thinking the ascendancies are wildly different to what they are, even once they're all announced in early access, because the game is just going to evolve so much. It's like the amount of times that ascendancies have changed in PoE1 is obviously quite high, but they're going so far with the scope of these in PoE2. They're like who, you know, they could just change out a skill, add a new skill or ability to an ascension, you know, like without much trouble, like in terms of the overall balance of the rest of the class, potentially. So,
well, my crackpot theory is they're doing this, all the skill additions, because they're just going to add more Ascendancy classes in the future instead of maybe doing the constant reshifting of balance and everything. Because imagine taking away time. Okay, imagine taking away the time stop ability from the Chronomancer, like, and swapping it out with someone else. You can't take away skills once you give them to players, can you? Especially these wild, cool skills.
They can add stats instead, right? Like, I mean, so the way our Ascendancy like goes generally is the same as the rest of the game. Everything just gets power crept over time. Yeah. That's just the natural direction of ARPGs. So, like, if you look at the Ascendancies right now, the ones they've revealed, most of the Ascendancy nodes have one line, literally just one line. Compare them to like PoE1 Ascendancies, and they're crazy. Like, this thing's just one line. It's just one skill. That's all you get, right? And like Sylver said there, like, over time, the Ascendancies will probably change quite a bit. But I think that core foundation of the Ascendancy, like the time stop skill, that will always be there. That is the bread and butter of that class. But for example, they might have something else, which is like you get another modifier added onto that, which says, you know, nearby enemies' action speed is slowed or something like that. Or, do you know what I mean? You get something else added to that node, which is just in line with the power creep that happens over time.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And we have seen, like, on the Pathfinder as an example, like, we've seen the opens going pretty wild with like the concoctions, right? There's 5 different, like, you know, I've talked in my designs about like duo nodes and trio nodes of like locking things out, right? They've got a node which has 5 options. Yeah, it's a penta node, right? Yeah. And so, like, they are open to like this like new design space, and not just with skills, but also with, like, you know, giving us more options. And I thought it was interesting. For 1 second, I kind of got a bit, this is like very much hopium, but the way that the trees are, because they're like on the edge of the frame, and I think that's just to show the artwork, right? But there was a part of me for a second that was like, are we gonna see like extra branches come? Because roughly at the minute there's somewhere between like 8 to 11 options on average. I went through them, and there's, like, you know, in terms of the number of nodes, so there is quite a high variance there. Like, they're open to adding more, as opposed to like the strict 8 that we more typically saw in PoE1. So who knows, you know, maybe over time they don't power creep it, they just option creep it, and they go, cool, here's just like more opportunity cost to like take into account, and you get an extra branch here, and then eventually in 3 years we end up with 14 node ascendancies or something, you know.
Oh yeah. And somebody in the chat brought up a great point. If they ever replace a skill with a new skill or change it out, they can always add the skill as a skill gem too, so they don't need to remove it from the game. They just give it as an option to everyone as well,
or an item. A chase, you know, temporalis, right? Temporalis, this like chase, you know, like Sancta, well, it's the Sekima, you know, item.
What if Temporalis just gives you the skill from Chronomancer? I hope that's not the case. I really hope that's not the case, but
But what if it gives you a less powerful version of it, right? Or it, you know, or it gives you an alternate version of it where you can't control it, but randomly it stops one enemy every, you know, like at nearby every second, you know, every 4 seconds or something. You just like, there's so many ways that they could do it. Anyway, we're really deep in the spec hole now.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine. That's totally fine. You know how they said that there's a boss that if you're a Chronomancer and you use that ability on the boss, they have a specific voice line that triggers, and then they use the ability back on you and say like, you can't do that to me. I control time.
That's cool.
I wonder if that is the final Sekima boss, if it's a very time-centric boss that we fight there.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Given Temporalis, right?
That's such a nerf to you. If you're like, hey, I really want to farm, like, I love Sanctum style content, I really want to do this, I'm a Chronomancer, like, imagine how like gimpy that would feel if you just
I really like that.
I love it.
I think it's going to be the same for other bosses. Like, for example, you're going to be playing Warrior, and you're just going to come up against like this massive like rock golem boss that just can't be stunned or something, and it's just like it's just like an immovable object, right? And like an entire ascendancy just doesn't really work against it. That's just something that's kind of the direction they're going with that. It can't be too oppressive. They need to be really careful with that. It can't be too oppressive.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty cool concept.
And all the different, so there's just so many things to talk about, guys. Well, we might need to do another one sooner than a few months after early access because there's just so much to chat about. All this storytelling and cinematics and all. They had a whole section in the Ziggy Q&A when they were just chatting about, yeah, these are all the crazy things we're doing to make each character feel unique, to make all the interactions with bosses and NPCs feel unique. And now, of course, Sylver, your prediction, opened with a cinematic cutscene, just bang on CGI. Look at that. How awesome was that?
That is such a good. That is so good.
It was just such a it was such an easy win. It theoretically, obviously, very difficult to make something like that, but just as it's so poetic to be like, we wanted to make D 2.5 15 years ago, and finally, I imagine for them, like when they first sat in the room and they got it back from whatever kind of studio helped develop that for them, or maybe they did it in house. I have no idea. Probably not. They all sit down and watch it, and that must have been like a really special moment to be like, we've created a world, we've got a cinematic of our world and our story that we're telling, and it was awesome, right? It was gory, it was grim, dark, it was it had some naughty words in it, and it really set the scene, like the wanderer moment, like understand like how you get handheld through Diablo 2. I think it did an even better job, to be honest. It was like slightly less mysterious and a bit more literal of like, here's this like arsehole, like, excuse my language, but like, here's this douche, and he's like, he's the first he's the first mini bad. He's the first act guy that you're really going to be up against. Just set the scene so well.
Do we know anything about that guy lore-wise? He's like carrying a Kalguran sword.
I have not gone into any of the lore at all because I want to be surprised in the first playthrough. All I know is I think the island it's Ogum, and it's in the Ezomite Isles, so it's somewhere we've never been before. Beyond that, I know nothing. But he was pretty darn cool. I know he's the bad guy, but I thought it was kind of badass when he just fed the dude to the seed of corruption and was like, we're gonna get a lot more of that for you. It was so good. I loved it. Yeah. Also, okay, so a little bit of lore speculation. The Iron Count seemed to know who the hooded one was. He said when he stabbed him with the sword, your kind doesn't rule over Rayclast anymore. It's got to be Sin or Innocence.
I know who it is, but I'm not saying.
You know who it is?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not going to spoil. I don't want to spoil.
Don't spoil it. But we do learn.
It's definitely innocent, but it's definitely innocence. But
wait,
it's
no, Dream. You got to tell us. Do we learn in the first 3 acts?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I just wanted to know if we were gonna be relieved in 2 weeks' time, or if we were gonna be blue-balled at the end of Act 3, and it's like, well, you actually find out who the hooded one is in Act 4 when you get that.
It's interesting because he calls the character, the young lad, interloper. I think that's the term he calls him, interloper, in the when he like first says his line.
Yeah.
And it's like, what does that mean? Like interloper. It's giving very interloper gives, very oh my god, what's the freaking thing in PoE1 with the blue dudes from space?
Harbingers.
Yeah, it's like very Harbinger, but I don't think it is, right? I think that's like a whole like non-thing, but
it's
like, what does interloper mean?
It's Tyrael. Oh my god! Look at local hole in the chat saving us all. Dreamcore, you can spill the beans. It's fine. It's Tyrael. Great.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, I had chills watching that cinematic. And...
yeah, that's just such a great. So I saw that cinematic like live at the presentation. It was epic. It was just
on a
so
big
epic.
screen with like the booming speaker. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
it was so good. Like
Oh,
that presentation is just it was just set the whole scene right because that was like the thing they opened with.
all right.
Very,
And
very
I'm
cool.
calling Dream out now, guys. I'm gonna piss him off. He says he has 7 hours of gameplay. We expect a 7-hour video on your YouTube channel. I don't care what it does to the algorithm. All right, you got to upload that thing raw, man, for all of us to watch.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see. I've got to. If I do that, like if I do upload it like that, I need to get it approved by GGG
Oh
first.
yeah, they got to go through all of it.
Yeah, they got
you're
to
right.
comb through it.
Yeah, and then if you got to cut stuff, then it's another re-upload. It takes a long time to upload that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
really
someone,
does.
someone at GGG, some poor person's got to watch 7 hours. Like their entire work day is just going to be watching your thing to approve it. But
it's Jonathan.
No, it's not.
It is actually Jonathan.
It is Jonathan.
Then I forbid you from sending that video to him because
Jonathan
he's got things to do.
Apparently watches like I would guess he can't possibly watch all of it because he loads of people, but he's like skimming through it to make sure that there's nothing there. Or just like get the gist of what it is.
Yeah, he watched my 4.5-hour video playing through with my wife that pointed out some parts. I was like, thank you so much.
Amazing.
Worth it. Oh my god, guys. Oh
god.
I wanna there's still more topics I want to discuss, but I actually do have to get to work in a few minutes here. So I want to close out the pod with your thoughts on what I think is the most exciting part of Path of Exile 2. And it's everything that we're going to find out in-game in 2 weeks. Mark and Jonathan both seem to share that sentiment. They just can't wait to sit in-game, look at global chat, watching people link unique items, fight bosses for the first time, discover all these story spoilers that we're talking about. You know, everyone except Dreamcore, who already knows who the hooded one is. But all these mysterious things that no one knows about, and thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not, millions of people are going to find out about in the next 2 weeks. Of everything that we don't know, what are you most looking forward to? I know it's a big question.
Yeah, go for it, Dream. Yeah,
it's all of the Ascendancy nodes that we haven't seen. That's like the biggest question mark for me right now. What else is hidden there? Like that's why. Like how can I like plan what I want to do with my build or whatever if I don't know like these nodes, right? We've seen some of them, but I want the rest. I want to see what else there is there. There's so much left to see as well. There's like insane amounts of nodes that they haven't shown. I assume they're going to be doing like teasers with the full drop of the Ascendant. You know, like how they do the like screen with all of the nodes pointing to where they are. Like from PoE1, I assume they're going to be doing that as teasers on the way up to, but maybe not. Like maybe they actually just leave it like that. Like please, please give us the full Ascendancy before launch, please.
Bro, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Please, GGG.
Please. He's begging. Oh god, do you know what's funny? Weirdly, as the guy that makes a lot of content about Ascendancies, I'm actually like least excited about that. Like I think I'm just like totally weirdly okay with that being an unknown and just being like I'm like the opposite of you here for some reason. And the thing that I'm most excited about is this sounds really boring, okay? But is the way that items, like the availability of getting good items through crafting, like that to me is like what I think is the core of what makes the game good. And how they've done that with, so I saw, and for some context, because they didn't talk about this yesterday, and you might be able to elaborate on this, Dream, like very briefly, but there's advanced and expert versions of every base type that can drop, and they're not based on rarity. So there's some kind of quality system happening based on a prefix on items that can drop. There isn't an affix. So it's like just a naming thing. So you can get expert versions of base drops and advanced versions of them. And we saw that. And then I thought, oh, maybe this is replacing the tier system. But then I saw Open World Gaming's, you know, like presentation YouTube stuff from the event you went to, Dream. And he said, and there is tiers. There was like a tier 3 item that dropped from like a, you know, a high level boss. And so I'm like, well, it's not that system then. We've still got the tier system. So that's the thing that I'm most in the dark about and most excited to find out is like, how does this tier system work? How is it like weighting affixes? How are they solving the rare drop loot like problem? And it seems like they've got multiple ways of doing this. And I'm very, very excited to just like play through a session and be like, oh my God, I dropped to tier 3 in like Act 4 or, you know, whatever, right? Like, oh my God. And that to me is the most exciting thing about this type of game. As well as obviously Ascendancies. But yeah, for some reason, I think I've just overthought about that. So yeah.
I will say very briefly that it's possible that they've changed something even since I played.
Right.
The bench, you know, the bench that they showed in the stream, which adds sockets, like you get socket, that wasn't in the build that I played. A different bench. You can go right now, a video that Imperium posted. That's the bench that existed in the version that I was playing, where you're able to salvage items down and you salvage a modifier and get essence, like from that modifier to be able to then craft that modifier onto another item, right? That system, it wasn't entirely sure from the live stream, it wasn't entirely obvious whether the socket thing has replaced that other bench, because the concept of the socket thing is that in the early game you can just place these things into the sockets that then fix like resistance problems. That's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
So whether they've replaced the other bench, because I also heard from another creator that bench that we saw in my playthrough when I was in LA wasn't supposed to be in that build. It was like something that was left in. So I'm a little bit confused as to whether both benches would exist or whether the one that I saw is gone in favor of the socket one, or who knows? Like I don't know. We didn't get that information.
So much
See what
is
I mean?
still up in
and it
the
could
air
be the same with
and
the
mysterious.
items that
Yeah.
you were just talking about.
Yeah. And that's something we didn't discuss today, guys. All the crafting that we saw, there's a lot of meta crafting in the game, and they want you to craft. They do not want, I think the circumstance that happens a lot in Path of Exile 1 right now, just speaking from my perspective as a trade league player, I save all exalts, maybe not as much anymore, but I save all my divines and crafting orbs so that I can trade later in the game. I never spend them. They're upping all the drop rates. They're allowing you to actually spend these currencies. They're adding in new ways to specifically target certain mods. It's an awesome system from what I see, and I think it's very sensible too. All the descriptions, I like paused. They're very clear about what each of these items do, and I think that's very important. I'm just very much so looking forward to actually being able to use my crafting materials instead of just stocking them all up in my stash starting from Act 1. Gonna be great.
For sure.
As for myself, I'm most looking forward to fighting the Act 3 end boss, whatever it is. I don't know what it is in the slightest. The boss fights are what I'm most looking forward to, and I don't think we've seen the Act 3 end boss yet, but I've read in a few articles that the Act 3 final boss is the most impressive boss fight that these people have ever heard about or seen in an ARPG before, which is pretty crazy. I'm expecting something phenomenal. And Dream, I don't know if you also know what the Act 3 boss is, and if you do,
I actually don't. I don't know what it is. I think I know what it is. I think we've already seen it. But
I think so. Yeah.
Do you think it's Doriani?
Yeah.
You think it is?
I've actually seen that boss fight from 100 to 0 in the presentation, and it's epic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the final boss fight of Act 3.
It might not be.
I don't think they'd show that to you. I don't think it is.
But it is such an epic boss fight though. It's so good.
Oh, I can't wait.
Like these boss fights, like the Axe boss fights, they're basically like mechanic wise, they're like pinnacle or like uber pinnacle bosses from PoE1. They're just so good. Like their mechanics and stuff are so good.
The Zesht boss fight, where he is clapping his hands together and sending those shockwaves at the monk, and the monk just periodically dodges those 3 times in a row, like rhythmically. Yeah. Oh, it just looks so satisfying. Okay. incredibly satisfying. I can't wait to get our hands on it, you guys. We're 2 weeks away.
That guy,
days.
by the way, like he seems like a combination of all of the previous Breach bosses. They
Yes.
seem to have all merged into one. That's why he's called We Who Are One, and the abilities that he uses are based on each of the things. So like he has like a fire orb, and when he like uses it, he says like a Zoth line, right? And then he has like an Esh thing, and it's like a big like lightning ring or whatever.
Yeah, he literally says like there's a line with the Esh one that I heard that was like, you know, Esh's scorn, or you know, whatever he says. He like names Esh. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say besides log in December 6th.
Log in, dude.
Log in. 2 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. CET, right? Oh, goodness gracious. Are you guys going to be pulling an all-nighter? What do you guys think? Are you just going to play until you can't play anymore? Or are you going to be a responsible adult? And, you know, I've played for a few hours. I'm going to go get some bedtime now, and then I'll come back in the morning.
Yeah, the first week is just going to be like just like sleeping and then waking up and like falling into the desk chair, hitting live, like go live, and then just just having like a drip of like pre-made, you know, like a smoothie food, you know, like.
Was that some Huel?
That's some Huel, yeah.
Zombie mode in chat, yeah, that's exactly what it's going to be. Yeah, like you turn into a goblin. You're like a goblin.
I can't wait to go goblin mode.
Yeah, I'm guessing you guys are going to do the same, right? Like,
I'll be playing a lot. Yeah, the thing is with it's always the case with like League launches that it just completely ruins my sleep schedule, and I just get like, you know, I get like such poor quality sleep. So it's just because like you still got to get up and do all the normal shit. So it's like you just end up sacrificing your sleep.
Yeah, and you start dreaming of like Zesh, and it'd be like, is this, you know, when you start dreaming, like that's what happens to me at some point. I'll start dreaming in the game. It happened with Settlers. I went deep in Settlers, and I was like in town, like recombinating stuff. I was like, what is going on? Yeah.
I have permission to go goblin mode from my family. I'm getting support from everyone. Grandmas are helping out. My wife is all good. She might come and play with me. She's kind of hyped up too. She saw that trailer last night, and she says like, yeah, it was okay. But I saw her face when she saw some of those Val gameplay cinematics at the beginning. She was like, oh, God. I mean, visceral reactions, guys. So she'll be into it. We'll see. We're going to probably play some couch co-op.
Amazing. Yeah.
Go for it. What?
I was just going to say we'll have to jump on, you know, when we're all streaming, we'll have to jump on the Discord live channel, and we'll sort of we'll just be catching up with each other, because I imagine we're going to be going deep into our own things, but a bit of co-op maybe from, you know, when it lines up here and there, will be fun.
Super deep, yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm going to start Self-Found or not. I'll have a look. I might start Self-Found.
Man, the currency exchange.
I'm definitely not starting hardcore. That's a no-go.
No.
But I'm looking forward to watching Quinn start hardcore, though.
Oh, is he starting hardcore?
He's definitely going to start hardcore. That's
what a madman!
You know.
Yeah. The dude's gonna go insane on stream. Those are gonna make for some epic clips. Oh.
No, we'll be fighting Zesh, and he'll be like fighting, you know, the bloated Miller, like day two, like.
Yeah.
Oh, the rip clips will be epic. All right, you guys, I'm going to have to sign off here because I got to get to work in a little bit. Give everybody in the chat and in the VOD your socials. Plug away. Sylver, we'll start with you. We'll end with Dream.
Okay, SylverXYZ on YouTube and on Twitch. Yeah, my channel is all about design stuff. We do a lot of theory crafting, do a lot of like very high-end kind of like deep dives into ascendancies and stuff. We've got Project 36, which is designing 36 ascendancies before early access launch. That's going to be an interesting twist now from this point on, because we know some of them. Just very much in the spirit of these guys here, just feeling very positive about the game. And I'm not worried about being cringe at all. Like, bring on the cringe. I'm totally fine with that. So
let's go, Sylver. I love it. Please cringe away. Dream, can you join us in the cringe, please, or you want to stay away from that stuff?
Yeah, well, I'll be. Everyone knows my tag, right? Dreamcore_GG on YouTube. I just do mostly mechanic stuff. I'm going to be doing mostly mechanic stuff as well on the lead up to launch. I mean, there'll be some. So the video I'm going to do today is like a really short recap of the entire Endgame. It's going to be like Endgame in 7 minutes or something like that, or 8 minutes, however long it takes. Just like really brief introduction to each mechanic. But most of the stuff that I'm going to be doing is based on ascendancies, skill tree, and keystones.
Awesome. Love to see it. I want to see some unique videos when the game comes out too, right, Dreamcore?
Oh yeah, I can't wait for the unique. Dude, I can't wait. The uniques are just going to be so good. I can't wait to see them all. Oh my god.
Hell yeah. Well, to both of you and everyone in the chat, thank you so much for tuning in and chatting this entire time. It's been phenomenal. The first Path of Exile 2 post-massive reveal, Still Sane. There will be more incoming. Like we said before, we'll probably do some co-op streams. We're going to be chatting to a lot of other people as well, including 2 people that are talking to us now. We've got Arrow, we've got Localhole, we've got plenty of people up to bat. I think tomorrow is Off Meta Michael and Jorgen. We are going to talk about all things Path of Exile 2 and some one-on-one chats. This has been fun,
I'm really
guys.
looking forward to seeing all of those chats. Like,
I mean,
it's going to be so fun hearing everyone's take on everything.
I cannot wait. I've had research on everyone, so each chat should be unique and entertaining. It's not just going to be, so you like Path of Exile 2? Yeah. You like,
Yeah.
What do you like about it? No. We're not doing any of that here, okay? It's going to be good, entertaining, and if it's not, hold me to it, guys. Tell me that it's shit, okay? I'm totally fine hearing it. I want to hear the feedback. We're going to sign off now. Thank you so much. Make sure to like the video, subscribe on YouTube. Appreciate it all. Farewell. I'll see you in Path of Exile 2.